Hey everyone, today I'm going to show you how to restring an acoustic steel string guitar. So grab your guitar and let's get some new strings on it. So first things first, if your strings are no longer shiny or they look dirty, it's probably time to change your strings. So that's just good to know. Here's what it looks like after they've been changed, so you can see that those thinnest two strings are shiny again. First thing, always put something down to actually protect your guitar from being scratched on whatever surface that you're working on. Then grab your guitar and prepare yourself to change the strings. So we're actually going to start on the top part of the guitar where the head is, because we have to unwind our strings to get started. I use one of these little string winders. You can pretty much buy a tool like this. They're usually not that expensive, and a bunch of different companies make something that's similar. So you just want to loosen them all up so that they're like this, and you can just pull them right off of their machine heads nice and easily. So you just grab onto the string and pull them straight up. Be careful with your fingers. You don't want to get your finger caught at the end of the string. But after they're all off, you are good to flip the guitar back around so that you can get the pegs out and actually remove the strings from the guitar entirely. These pieces right here behind the saddle are your pegs. You can see they're almost like a yellowy color on my guitar. And my string winder has this little cutout in it that allows you to pry them up pretty easily. So if you have one of these tools, it makes this job a lot easier for you to do. So you want to pull all those pegs out, and then you'll have access to remove the strings entirely from your guitar. Now that they're all out, I can grab onto my strings and just pull them all out in one go. This is also a really good time to clean your guitar, so if you haven't done that in a while, I would advise doing that now. I've actually made another video about this that you can check out, so you can check that out here if you want to, with a lot more details about this whole process. But now that it's clean, we can get our new strings on the guitar. So these Gibson strings actually list the size of the string by like first, second, third, fourth, to get from the thinnest to the thickest string. Some companies will actually have a different color on either the ball end or the wrap of the string so that you know which one is which. But even if it doesn't have that, you can just look at the strings and see which one's the thinnest and which one's the thickest and put them on your guitar in that order. If your guitar has a pickguard like mine does, then you want to put the thinnest string closest to the pickguard and then work your way towards the thickest string on the opposite side. And all I do is I put the strings into the holes there. I don't kink the end of the string. I know some people do that to try and hold it in place better, but I'm going to show you my process, and I've never found any problem with doing it this way. So I take the bridge pins now that all the strings are in, and you can see that there's a groove usually in the pin. And I want to hold the string just so I can see the ball end right in the hole. And then I push the pin against the ball end of the string and I insert that into the hole as far down as it goes. And the reason I do that is because now the string is sitting as close as it can against the actual underside of that saddle, right inside the guitar body. So as I'm starting to tune the guitar up, there's not going to be as much play in the string to keep that string sliding and sliding as I'm tuning the guitar up. It's going to be pretty much right against that pin, and there's not going to be too much room for it to move. So it's going to help me out later. But I'm going to flip this around now, go to the machine heads, and show you how I actually put these strings on. So each of these machine heads has a hole in it, and you're basically just like threading a needle at this point. So I'm taking my high E string and I'm putting that through the hole on the machine head and just feeding that through. Now when I'm putting the strings on, I actually move from the closest machine head to the body to the furthest one away in this order, because I want the strings to not get in the way of each other as I'm actually putting them on. And now there's two things that we need to figure out when we're putting strings on. We need to go which way the string's actually wrapped around the machine head, and how much slack we're going to leave in the string to make our little coils on the machine head itself. So on these thinner two strings, I usually leave like a whole hand's distance between the string and the fretboard of the guitar, just to make sure it gets wrapped around enough times. Now I take that same tool that we were looking at before, that string winder, and we can actually start winding this up. But the way I do this to keep proper tension and to make sure that our coils all line up is I hold my pointer finger down on top of the string and I pull up with my other fingers. So you can see here that string sitting on top of my three fingers, and then I push down just beside that with my pointer finger. And that leaves enough tension on the string for me to be able to wind this up. And again, it lets our coils sit one on top of each other in a nice uniform pattern. As we're twisting this machine head, we want to make sure that the string is coming up through the center of the head and then going around the top of the machine head. So on this close side, it's going to go up and towards us, and on the far side, it's going to go up and away from us. So that's sort of the pattern of getting these strings on. I'm going to show you that here. So you can see now the string's going to come up through the middle and then wrap towards the outside of the machine head. Once you get a little bit on there, you can give it a little bit of a pull to make that tension secure on the machine head itself. Pull that top part out of the way. And then again, I'm just keeping and trying to maintain that tension with my hand. So I'm pulling up on the string and pushing down at the same time between my 3 fingers and my pointer finger. And that's going to allow the actual string itself to, again, just have proper windings, one on top of each other, to keep that as clean and as easy to put on as possible. And it also makes it easier to take the string back off later. So you want to keep winding and winding this. The string's going to slowly get closer to the fretboard, and eventually we're going to get that to a spot where it's pretty close. You can see the wounds on this now. See how nice and uniform they are? That's kind of the goal. That's what we're going for. And there's always more wounds on the thinner strings than the thicker ones. But as we're close here, you want to just fit the string into its own respective groove. So this thinnest string is going to go in the first groove here closest to us. And then we just want to get this tightened enough that you're starting to get a pitch out of the string. You're not tuning it yet. You just want to hear a pitch out of it. Doesn't matter what it is, just so that it's tight on the guitar itself. And again, keep in mind which way you want to have these strings wound. We've got the first 3 done now. When we switch to the other side, we're not going to keep moving with the next string in order. We're going to go all the way to our thickest string, because again, that's going to go to our closest machine head on that side, and then work our way towards the center. So it's kind of like 1, 2, 3, 6, 5, 4 for our strings when we're putting them on. So I'm going to put the rest of these strings on, and then we're going to get to C. We shouldn't have to hold the pegs down, because realistically we're not doing that much tension on the string yet. Again, we're just trying to get them with a bit of a sound. Now that we got all the strings on and they're tight enough to get some sound out of them, you might feel like you want to cut these bits of the string off the end, but don't do that yet, because that's actually going to help hold our strings in place for this next step. So we're not going to use that winder anymore. We're just going to do everything else by hand now and a tuner. I've got a clip-on tuner, but you can use whatever tuner that you have as long as it helps you get in tune. So we're going to flip this guitar a little bit so you can see what's going on. And we're going to get this guitar in tune, but to do that we want to actually hold the pegs during this step, because this is when we're trying to get it up to pitch. This is when the ball ends of the strings are going to pull towards those actual pins and sometimes push them out of the guitar. So I'm just going to show you here how I do this on one of the strings. I'm tuning with my one hand, that's just out of frame right now, but I'm actually holding and playing the string at the same time. So I've got one finger on the bridge pin and the other finger is tuning, and I'm just holding pressure on that bridge pin to make sure that it doesn't come out of the guitar, that it's staying in place as I tune this string up. And I just want to make sure that I tune all the strings at this point, holding down the pegs to make sure that they stay in place, and I'm going to tune every single one of these strings into tune. Now, this is a really important part for me, because this is what actually helps our guitar stay in tune when we first change strings on it. And what it is just stretching the strings out. You may have never done this before, so I'm going to show you the process from 2 different angles here. The first one is just going to be lying down, if you want to do this on a bench or on a table like I'm doing, where you're just holding down different portions of the fretboard and lifting that string as much as you can off of the guitar. So you're just pulling on it. Now I'm going to show you how I normally do it, which is like in a seated position. And I'm just pushing with my thumb, again, as I'm holding with my other hand across the fretboard. And you want to do this a couple times. Now remember, we did put this string into tune already, so this was actually tuned to our low E. But now you're going to hear the difference as I tune this back up after stretching the string. So it moved a lot, considering that we had to tune that string way up to get back to our E. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep doing this on each string until I can stretch it and go back to tune it, and it stayed in tune during that stretch. So just keep stretching, tuning up, stretching, tuning up, until each of those strings stays in tune after you stretch them again. Now we've got it in tune, and we can flip the guitar back around, and now is our chance to actually clip those little dangly parts of the strings off of the top. I try and cut them pretty close. You don't want to go super close because you don't want the string to fall through, but you do want it close enough that you're not going to get caught on it with your clothes or your fingers or something and actually hurt yourself a bit. So I cut all these off, make sure that they're fairly close. And then you actually want to tune your guitar back up again, because your guitar will slightly fall out of tune as you cut the ends of these strings off. So there you have it. That's how to restring an acoustic steel string guitar. So I hope your guitar now is ready to go. It's nice and stable, in tune with some fresh strings on it for you to continue playing for hours and hours. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments, and I will get back to every single one of them. Hopefully you've learned a little bit today, and I just always appreciate you being here watching these videos. So thank you so much. As always, love you guys.